Boys, we've gone through every single week. We've talked about buy, hold, sell. We've added a watch list to this one. There's a couple of players on this one. So let's have a chat about the buys this week.
Targets acquired.
Mattrix, kick us off. This one's an obvious one. He's very popular.
Yeah, Blaze Talagi. He was great on the weekend. He's impressed me in his first couple games. I don't own him yet. He'll be coming in for me this week. He just... At 200k, playing 5'8", for Parramatta, who ordinarily score quite a few points, even in a losing team, still scored all right with 48 over the weekend. I actually don't see a reason not to get plays.
Not with a negative, negative 55 break even this week, Josh. Like it's a no-brainer pick at the moment in centre wing where we've been screaming out for a cheapie for a while.
It's also just the perfect off for Jacob Gagai as well. Like you started with him and didn't work out. He's just been sitting there. He's a perfect off if you don't, if you need to get him out, so you're not having to lose money there, which is great. The next obviously being Kai Pearce-Paul. Obviously we are the leading ticket holders of the KPP fan club, and it's looking like he's a genuine keeper. I genuinely think he could be like a 2RF 5-6 at the end of the season, and you haven't missed the boat. Yes, you've probably lost 100k, but still has a very good break even. I think of all qualifying players, he is ranked 11th for break even with a -2. I think it's a 60 average plus, and then it's going to be better than that once he finds that attack and finds his groove into the NRL.
And still only 15% owned, which is actually really surprising for me. He obviously started the season off the bench, which deterred a lot of people from starting with him, and a lot of people have still had those question marks with that job share risk with Dylan Lucas, but I guess the good thing this week is that Dylan Lucas hasn't been named on the bench this week, so he's in the reserves. So if that stays that way, Kai Pearce-Paul obviously has played 80 the last 2 weeks. I think he's a lock again for 80 based on what their bench looks like at the current point in time. So yeah, absolute lock. The third one, Jack Bostock. So Jack Bostock is a guy I went early on 2 weeks ago, which I'm really happy about. He's got a negative 41 break even this week after he's smashed out a 77 and an 84 in his last 2 games. In saying that, against the Dragons and the Gold Coast Titans, probably 2 of the leakiest teams when we're talking Supercoach points. But in saying that, he is coming up against the Tigers this week. So I guess if there is a week to buy a Jack Bostock Mattrix, it's going to be this week, especially with the fact that there's every chance he could make another 100k and be 500k next week.
Yeah, if there ever was a week, it was probably last week. I suppose we're here to tell you that you haven't missed the boat on both KPP and Bostock. Like, just because you missed out doesn't mean that you've missed out. Yes, you've missed out on 80k. There could still be... Look, Bostock is sort of Alofi Khan Pereira from last year, if I could do a comparison year on, year out. Like, Alofi got to, I think, 540 at one stage, and look, Dolphins are on a great run. That's why we were high on blokes like Hammer and stuff, and even looking at some of those like Herbies and stuff throughout the year. Bostock, throughout the preseason, Bostock's benefiting from the draw. Once the draw slows up, let's just move Bostock onto what could be a genuine gun. It seems foolproof.
Yeah. I mean, negative 40 break even. You can't really look too far past that, can you? In a position that we're not really seeing a ton of cash gen, and there's a lot of guys that we might want to jump off. But we'll talk about them soon, and we should move on to the holds. Bit of contention around this first one, Josh. I'll kick things off to take the heat off you, mate. But Nicho Hynes, I feel like he's a hold. I think he's a hold this week. Now, it obviously depends on if you have Nathan Cleary, purely because you might have to cop an AE this week if you're planning on holding Cleary and Hynes. But I don't necessarily think that now with Sam Hughes being named to start, there is much less risk of a really big AE nightmare in your team. Nicho Hynes is a guy I'm playing around with at the moment. Do I sell him? Do I hold him? And there is a logical kind of explanation as to why you would hold Nicho Hynes, Josh.
Yeah, I just think like he sucks. But him sucking is still like at Jerome Hughes or Sean Johnson being great. Like that's the only thing. It's like, yeah, look, it's probably not going to be a 94 average as what we saw last year. But when it gels, if it gels, it'll probably be like an 83, 84, which is still like miles better than anyone not named Nathan Cleary. So really like him. The only problem this week is we're going to cop an AE, but there's no real standout captaincy options early in the week. I mean, you've got the Storm taking on the Broncos. You've got the Roosters taking on the Bulldogs. That's probably a slam dunk for a Dom Young or a Teddy. But if you don't own any Roosters assets, then it gets kind of grim. You know, you got Seagulls taking on the Panthers. It's like Turbos becomes a no option. There's no Cleary. So that's the only problem that I've got with taking AE. But yeah, with Hughes starting, it definitely raises his floor for being your auto emergency. Jesus, I nearly brought on my dinner. Yeah, it raises your floor of that auto emergency. It goes from borderline 12, 13 points to probably something like a 23, 24 at the worst.
Which is fine. I'd be more than happy with a 24 as my auto emergency rather than a 7. And yes, the next one from Disco Turtle, Mattrix, you can take this one away because we're not staying to sell this bloke. You got to hold on.
Yeah, look, he's probably not going to be the 700k guy that he was a couple years ago. We get that in the centers, but that could just be an injury away. But I think taking a Panthers center at 400k with the pedigree, with the talent that this guy is, he's had a couple of rough matchups the last couple of weeks. If people jump off him, I implore them to. I think that I will keep backing him in for the foreseeable future.
For audio listeners, we probably should say who we're talking about. Taylor May.
Taylor May.
It's very, very rare that two centers feast in the same game, and it's been very, very beneficial for Isaac Tungo that he's had great matchups for the past 2-3 weeks. Left-sided edge players have gone down for the opposition team, so Tungo's been able to feast. And we know what May can do. Yes, To'o shifted sides. I don't think that actually affects him too much. I think people are maybe just blowing that out of proportion. They're trying to put 2 and 2 together, but they're getting 5, not 4. I don't see him being terrible. Like, his base is always going to be there. It just hasn't the last 2 weeks. We keep saying averages aren't consistent. They will fluctuate, especially with center wings, especially with centers more so than wingers. Like, it's going to be very, very up and down. So I've got no qualms over May. It hasn't been fun the last couple of weeks, but the same people that sell him are going to be the same people that post, "Oh my God, can't believe Taylor May just scored 90." It happens with centers, so you just write it out.
Yeah, agreed. And we've talked about him a little bit already, but Sam Hughes is the third hold for this week. Oh, and look, I think there was a comment. I'm going to try and find it. I started right at the start of the show. Wayne Mulligan, even before the show started, was ready to rip into Matty and me, saying that can we go back to the last video where Braino and Mattrix both said trading out Hughes to Xavier Willison was a must this week? It was until about 4 p.m. So, but obviously Willison hasn't been named because he's got a head knock at training. So it's not like he's been dropped.
I was about to
actually
ask,
not made the team.
I've been off social media this afternoon. I didn't know actually what happened to him. So it was just a HIA.
Yep.
Yeah, just a head knock at training. Yeah.
Can I jump in on this one? Because this is something that we pay Supercoach Gold for. If you hold your finger over Sam Hughes and then go to the little exclamation bar, 14 minutes in round 4, Samuel Hughes. The role of Samuel Hughes is quickly diminishing. He will become an easy flip for Broncos pop Xavier Willison as well. So it wasn't just us. Thank you, Tommy Sangster.
Oh, it was a slam dunk move until training, it just was. But now the fact that he's starting, it makes it easier to stomach. I saw some people saying, "Well, maybe he gets 50 minutes." Like, are you fucking delusional? Like, he's not going from 14 minutes to 50, but he may get 35, which is going to be fine. He can be a play this week as your worst player in your 17, and he could be a fine AE. So if you're holding Hughes, if you're holding Cleary and Hines, I think it's fine. But yeah, the holds for us this week: Hines, May, and Hughes. Couple of sells. Let's move into them.
Some absolute no-brainers to start, isn't there?
His ownership's still pretty high. Tane Tuiapiki. We've now got confirmation that he hasn't got the spot back, even after the concussion protocol. RTS played fullback last week with Himing in the 11-day, but then we see the return of Chance to Klukstar. So for anyone that was holding on hope that maybe Chance wasn't back ready to go, we get one more price rise out of Tane. Unfortunately, it's just not the case. And I also think he's too expensive to hold in the event of someone going down. It's not like a Jacob Gagai where he's bottom dollar that you can just hold there because if anything happens, he comes in. It's just a case of he's probably got too much cash in him and we can easily flip him on.
Yep. Unfortunately, Mattrix Luke Metcalf is a sell. He's going to miss a fair amount of time now, probably aiming for the back end of the season, I think, from what I've seen. But yeah, it doesn't look good for him. So he's definitely a move on. And we were talking earlier today, Matty. He is over 10% owned, which actually surprises me. I thought you were the only bloke talking about him this year.
It's that
Look,
influence.
like it just goes to show how much influence I have out there in the Supercoach community. But look, realistically, the fear I have for Luke Metcalf is that there's another couple of guys that can play in the halves for the Warriors, and that he might not get that opportunity back because Tamari Martin. I've watched him for most of his career. I really enjoyed him at the Broncos and everything as well. Watched him revive his career there, but he missed out because he got injured and people stepped up and took his spot. And I suppose with how deep the Warriors are in the halves, that there's always the worry that could happen to Metcalf if Tamari fires, if Chanel Harris-Tavita fires, if he gets the opportunity. Yeah, that's the worry for Metcalf. Hopefully we can see him back in first grade this year, if not next year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's had a fucking horrid run of injuries, Metcalf, so hopefully he comes back bigger and better. So, what about the next one?
Speaking of injuries, a bloke that's struggled with them. He's managed to stay fit this year, but Ben Travojevic lost 4.4K last week, 310. So if you didn't sell last week, then you haven't lost much. A 37 break even. His play on field is not great. Got through a fair bit of base last week, but only played 50 minutes, scored 36. Was on 34 at halftime, so 2 points in 10 minutes in the second half. Corey Waddell is just eating into these minutes. We've gone 72 minutes, 80, 61, 50, and Waddell's just getting a more increased role. They've lost 2 games in a row. I don't think Burbo's been up to standards, and the minutes are diminishing. So I would probably just try and cash out. You got your little price rise. Move on to anyone. I mean, he's a great downgrade to Blaze. It's going to give you 100K, and you can do what you want with that. But yeah, I sold Burbo last week just because I needed to. And I'm happy about it in hindsight because I definitely would have sold him this week if I haven't already.
That is exactly what I'm doing. So I'm moving on Burbo to Talangi. It's an absolute no-brainer pick at this point.
Are you looking at someone maybe in our watch list? Do we have a stinger ready for this week or we don't?
Nope, I don't. I didn't make one. So anyway.
Watch lists. Yeah, some jazz hands. Mike Acevo, 53 points in his first game back for the Parramatta Eels. Could have had 3 or 4 tries. They had so much ball. Morgan Harper dudded him so much. Tigers jammed well. A couple of bad balls. I mean, Junior Bolo put one into Rosed. Gutho struggling a little bit at times with his thing. But I think how often they went left, I think Sevo, it's just going to be the makeup of volume, isn't it? Yeah, he's not the greatest winger. But if you give a bloke 20 chances a game, he'll score one or 2 of them on an average. I mean, he's average, around a try game. So we saw that on the weekend. He got 53. You're paying a 54 for him. He'll go on runs. And if you don't have enough money to jump on a Gutho, then I think a guy like Staines the Sevo stopper. I think Staines with the Morgan Harper stopper, and it made Sevo get a frostbite out there. But yeah, I think Sevo's a guy to look at. I don't know if you put this in here to have a bit of a jab at me because I'm now a newly Mark Sevo owner. But I think with just how much they're going to go left, it's just a case of volume for Sevo.
No, I put him in there because he's not on the bubble yet. It's his second game this week. So it kind of makes sense to watch another week before you jump on. And the same goes
or just buy sight unseen, just without a game.
Just rip in. Look, to be fair to you, Mike Acevo's played enough NRL for us to know, for the same team, for us to know that he's a decent pickup. So I'll back you on that one. But it doesn't count for anything unless you go and get in the other 3 Parramatta players around him. So hopefully those are your trades this week.
I might get Morgan Harper this week as well. That way I can have Dylan Brown, Sean Lane, Morgan Harper, and Mike Acevo.
Bailey Simonson's back for Harper. He's gone.
And then, sweet. And then when the bye rolls around, I'll be playing. I'll have to see if Jacob Gagai gets a call up or Sam Hughes. I'll see if Spencer Lenius, off his suspension.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great time. Jaden Campbell's the second on the watch list. Obviously, his second game, he looked okay game 1, but he just plays for a fucking terrible team. So that's the issue for him. Remember the hype that he got in the preseason before everybody found out that he obviously was injured and going to miss some time. He was everyone's 5'8"
But I don't know, what's changed? None of us, either 3 of us weren't keen in the preseason. I'm still not overly keen now. I mean, he's got a 48 and 50 minutes with no attack, which is he might have had some attack, which is sort of what he was we always said he had value, but when he played fullback, he was at like a 51 or something like that. So it wasn't screaming value. And with Lockie Galvin now, it's like, why would we spend up when we can just get that from Galvin for 250k cheaper?
Yeah, he had a line break and a line break assist
So 20 points
in attack. So yeah, his base was pretty ordinary, but that's kind of again what we said in the preseason, right? But
if
I think Galvin saved us.
If we expect the Titans to be dog shit, then we can't put faith in them to get good. Their draw gets pretty stinky. They've got the Cowboys at Queensland Country Bank. They got the Raiders at GAO. Two pretty tough places to go away, up in North Queensland and then down in Canberra. They do play Manly at Seabus, but then they play the Warriors at Go Media. Then they play the Storm, the Cowboys again. So it's not a great time to be alive. It doesn't really open up until really ever. They have a really tough sort of up and down draw. I guess the ideal time would be round 14 against Souths, Tigers, Warriors, Sharks, Parramatta, Manly. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have any interest at all. I think Lockie Galvin being him and Dylan Brown just doing Dylan Brown things. I've got no interest in jumping on what's his name? Jaden Campbell.
Yeah, what's his name pretty much sums him up about interest levels from us. But he is a watch because he's on his second game, so he can just sit back and watch before his price goes up next week. If he rips up, then go nuts. But Mattrix, Cam Munster has been mentioned. If I searched the name Cam Munster in our group chat, I would find some relevant messages from today. So do you want to talk to me about that?
But the messages have only come from one person too. There's been about 10 of them.
Yeah.
They've only come from one account.
Well, if you have a look and back to the Luke Metcalf messages, and you probably should have jumped on. So maybe Cam Munster's the answer. No, I'm forced to do a trade in 5'8", had a heap of money in the bank. Am weighing up my options with Cam Munster. Of course, it would be smart, which is why he's in the watch list, to maybe have a look at him over the next couple of weeks. Maybe get a little price drop while he's working his way into it. But when Dillbags hasn't really been what we'd hoped, at least with his scoring, he looks all right on the eye test. Look, maybe Munster could be really good. It's just hard coming back from injury, I suppose. You'd love to wait a week.
And you can. That's the beauty of it. Yeah, but the reason you go early is because you just want this big pod play that, you want to beat everybody to him. And if you think Munster is going to be that kind of player, there's so much fucking risk for me coming off a guy that couldn't run last week.
If this was any other injury, if this was a rotator cuff, if it was, a pec tear, if it was any other injury, I'd be tempted. But it's like, fuck, no kick, maybe no kicking, maybe no running, maybe just being 2018 Grand Final Cooper Cronk. Like, the only problem with the groin is just like, I don't know what to expect. And he's obviously fit enough to play. Like, the Storm aren't going to, put their best player in the park. And for if him not being done, but it's just like any other injury, broken hand, broken arm, like you'd be like, sweet, that's fine. But anything lower body with Munster, it's like, shit, I just want to give it a couple of weeks. And if he comes out and goes 100, fuck, tip my hat to you. Like, you're a better man than me.
It's not a great matchup this week either.
No.
And I think also we've been following this quite closely, and maybe me more than everyone else, because I drafted him in with my first pick in draft, and I've been sitting there stewing on this.
I had to call Lifeline after about round 3 for you. You were about ready to trade him for Luai. You messaged me like, do I just take Luai?
Well, I mean, there was plenty of comments coming out. I think the Cam Smith leaked audio on the Bloke podcast was floating around, and they were talking about how Munster hadn't even broken out into a sprint yet. So I'm like, fuck, this could be bad. And then obviously he's come good. But because this is such a volatile injury and it's such an inconsistent injury as well based on the reporting of it, it's like 1 week he's good, the next week he's shit, the next week he's good, and then he can't run again. So there's way too much going on for me to...
Problem is the draw. Broncos, Bulldogs, Roosters. All right, cool. Let's give him those 3 games to get through. Then you play Souths. All right, we'll get through that, and then we'll pick him up. Titans, Sharks, Para, Manly. Sweet. We get 4 weeks out of Munster, and then it's
Origin.
straight to Origin. It's like, God damn it. So by the time he gets good, by the time he's like primed for like fitness, his draw gets good. It's like, oh, we get him for 3 weeks, and then he's gone.
Not ideal.